Sam, what's up, man? I'm so glad you're here. This is going to be a lot of fun. I love talking about play. So, like when our friend Hector was like, "Hey, you got to have Sam on," I was very excited because seeing what you do, teaching people how to do gymnastics, it seems like a very interesting way of helping people reach their fitness goals
Mhm.
rather than just kind of some of the standard 3 sets of 10 bench press sort of thing. So this is gonna be dope. Really looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yeah. So, can you just give us a little bit of background on how you got into this space? Like, how did you get connected with the gymnastics certification and training other coaches and clients on how to do that? It was like, what's your background and how do I do that? Mostly.
Right. So I'll give you the hopefully short version. So I didn't do anything physical, with the exception of like Little League baseball. I didn't do anything physical until I got into my early 30s. I uh, I was I spent about 10 years as a rabid drug addict and alcoholic, and then when I finally got sober, I got into my early 30s and I realized that eating pizza all day and doing nothing wasn't getting me fitter. And so I'm like, okay, well, I got to do something different. And I found some programming online from a bunch of smart programmers, and they were programming power cleans in their workout. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And so I'm standing in a Globo gym with iron plates on a barbell, trying to figure out how to power clean by watching YouTube videos. And that eventually led me to CrossFit. And in CrossFit, I fell in love with the kind of methodology and the community aspect of it, and then doubled down. I left the job I was at and I became a full-time CrossFit trainer. I spent the next this is now my 7th year as a full-time trainer. Um, and it's what I do. So in and around that, I found a group called the Gymnastics Course, and they are gymnastics specialists, primarily teaching gymnastic skills to CrossFitters, because there's a gymnastics component to CrossFit. And I fell in love with that and saw a gigantic missing hole in not only my own fitness, but also other people's approaches to fitness. And um, they offer a really, really nice, cohesive way of understanding that. And so I began a 3-year internship process, and still learning and growing, and then becoming an entrepreneur and all that stuff. And now one of my gigs, which I'm very, very, very happy about, is I work for the gymnastics course seminar staff. I travel the country and sometimes the world, and I work with other coaches and other athletes, and sometimes people who are just there for fun. And I teach them how to be smart with their movement, how gymnastics can not only make them fitter, but also eventually change their lives.
Fantastic. So, do you have any sort of gymnastics background, or you just were like more attracted to that modality?
Um, no, I have no gymnastics background whatsoever, which is funny, because you would think that you kind of have to have that as a prerequisite. And what what CrossFit does really well is it encourages and introduces people to gymnastics. Um, and typically it's, have you ever done pull-ups? Have you ever done dips? Have you ever done push-ups? But really, gymnastics is all body weight movement. Um, and what the course taught me is the importance of that, not just for like training and for fitness. I was attracted to it because I heard one of the coaches say, there's nothing that will change a person's life like regaining the use of their body. And all
Mm.
gymnastics is body weight movement. And so if I have that person who walks into the gym and they're 50 or 60 years old, more than what weight is on the bar when they squat, or more than, how fast they can run a mile, getting their first pull up is going to radically change how they view their body's capabilities.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
the way of kind of the ability almost over physique.
Yes, very much so, which is kind of at the heart of how CrossFit views things. It's kind of the heart of the methodology.
I also think that yeah, someone who's 60 coming in for the first time getting a pull up is great. But like you take someone who's 35 been lifting their whole lives, but it just has limited function
Yeah.
because they're really bound up. They've never focused on mobility and bodyweight movements. They've just been using barbell stuff like you're supposed to, right? Like
Sure.
5-3-1, right?
Oh yeah, man.
If you
And
don't
don't get me
squat, you're
wrong,
a pussy. It's
dude.
the
Five three
rules.
one will get you super strong.
Sure.
Um, but if you, to your point, if you don't step back and examine, what does your mobility look like? What's the downstream effect of only doing 5-3-1? What are you leaving on the table? What could you be doing that you're not doing? And when you're 60 or 70 or 80, what's that going to cost you if you don't start doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between some closed chain and open chain exercises? Closed chain, if you haven't heard that term before, it's basically just like moving your body through space, where open chain is a little bit more like moving an external implement, a dumbbell or a barbell through space. You talk about like the pros and cons of that and why someone would maybe gravitate more towards closed chain.
To be fair, I want to make clear, I think there's value in examining closed chain exercises and in examining body weight movement, especially because it's underutilized. That is not in any way to imply that I think that open chain only is, hey, go do that, or it's a bad thing, one way or the other. Balance
For sure.
is very important.
Yeah,
So
and different tools for different things, right?
absolutely
Can't neglect the screwdriver just because
Yes.
you like a hammer.
Exactly that. So if you were to kind of layer everything in a pyramid, right? You would assume that if I want to get a person fitter, having them understand how to move their body through space is kind of at the foundation of that, right? So the more effective and efficient you can be moving your own body through space, the more you can exhibit mastery of movement, the greater your capacity when you then add an external load, right? So in any open chain exercise, all things relating to the mover, your body, are going to be the limiting factor. At some point, the load itself could be too heavy, but if you don't have the range of motion to move the load that you want, that's a limiting factor. If you don't have the strength at end range, then that's going to be a limiting factor. One of the things that bodyweight movement does very, very well is work a whole portion of fitness that doesn't get addressed by open chain exercises, by external loading. Things like balance, accuracy, agility, coordination. And I can guarantee you, if your balance and your coordination go up, then so is the weight on your snatch, or so is the weight on your clean and jerk. If you spend some time in an inverted position, being able to hold your body in a handstand, then the coordination and upper body strength that builds will translate directly to open chain exercises like, the push press or the strict press. There are ways to approach some of that stuff in a loaded fashion, so like dumbbells versus barbells and stuff like that. But I think weights are easy. And when I say weights are easy, what I mean by that is if I go into the gym and I put one more pound on the barbell today than I did yesterday, I'm fitter. And the story that I tell myself is I'm also a better person.
That's a story I tell myself too.
Right? I think everybody does that. And that's why everybody puts their phones out and they lift as many weights as they can, or they film every snatch or every clean and jerk or whatever it is. But nobody films themselves struggling through pull-ups. And nobody films themselves struggling to, rep out that last set of dips or something like that, because gymnastics is very rude.
It is rude.
It's super.
I feel
rude.
like with gymnastics, it's like with bench press, or whatever, you can kind of hit a wall and you can push through it. Maybe get one or two more reps. Mm-hmm. Gymnastics is like you hit a wall and then you fall on your face. That's been my experience, at least.
Yeah. And that's assuming you even have the requisite skill. And so take a strength-based exercise like the dip, right? At some point, you either have it or you don't, because I can't adjust the load that is your body. Everything is body weight, right? And so beyond that, it's some form of, am I self-spotting? Do I have a machine that's going to help, modulate some of my load or something like that? And when you hit that wall, most of us don't have the understanding or the skill necessary to be able to modulate that load. And so we don't know how to get to that point where we can work our body weight and grind through something the same way we could if I'm going to grind a weight out on a bench press. Because the bench press, I can fine tune that weight. I can add a pound, or I can add a half a pound or something like that. And you can really get nitty gritty. It's not as well taught how to do that with gymnastics.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I've also, you tell me what you think about this, but I've always taught and heard that when you're doing a closed chain exercise, moving your body through space, your body doesn't understand load really. All it understands is stress and tension. So when you're doing something where you're actually lifting yourself up, doing a pull up, your body will sometimes read that stress as, if I don't get myself into this tree, I will be eaten by the saber-toothed tiger that's pursuing me. If I can't sprint myself up this hill, like I could potentially die. And our bodies responding to this evolutionary mechanism will allow us to burn fat at a more rapid pace and build muscle at a more rapid pace, because it knows that lean tissue is going to keep us alive and fat tissue is going to slow us down and get us eaten. Would you agree or disagree with that?
That's an interesting notion. I think that, so really what we're talking about is task accomplishment, right? I must do this thing or else. And so I think the way that manifests in gymnastics is, take the pull-up, for example. I'm hanging on a bar, and I go to pull my body weight, and at some point I just start to get stuck, and it's not going to go any further than this. And so what my body says, oh, I have to get above that bar. And so you start the knee jump or the undulation, right? That kick, or wiggle, we often refer to it as, to get my body up over that thing. Whereas you can't do that really with an external load. If I'm trying to do a max effort deadlift, there's something built into that where it's like, if I move in the wrong direction, this is going to end badly for me.
I'm going to poop my spine out. Yeah,
exactly. Like nobody's going to try to like with a deadlift at max weight. So it's interesting that we generate momentum internally from a core to extremity to try to accomplish that. To root that back to some kind of evolutionary basis, I would not be surprised to find out that it has its roots in that kind of thing. That might be why it's so difficult for people to slow down and to really focus on form and virtuosity when it comes to gymnastics, because there's this deep-seated gene level need to get up into the tree or death.
Interesting. I also never heard the word virtuosity applied to strength training, so I like that a lot.
Yeah, we define virtuosity as doing the common uncommonly well, right?
Ooh, I love that. I'm going to put that on a shirt.
Yeah. So virtuosity, specifically with applied to gymnastics, is if I exhibit virtuosity in gymnastics, let's say a push-up, right? Push-up is a common movement. Well, I can do a common thing uncommonly well. As an example, I take my body from a support position through the entire range of motion of my elbow and shoulder down till my chest touches the ground and my hand is by my armpit, all the way back to a full lockout. There's no point in the middle where I stop and I kind of rep out a couple reps or something like that. Every single rep is the entire length of motion that I am capable of exhibiting. That would be considered virtuosity in movement.
I like that. And I like that as a kind of a standard that you set for yourself and your athletes too.
Yeah.
And I love like core values and being able to apply language to these sorts of things. So when you can bring it back and be like, hey, did you exhibit virtuosity in your last set? Like I think, and you have that same, like that shared language between coach and athlete.
Yeah.
I think you can start elevating your performance better than if you're like, hey, do better, push hard. You got
more betterer.
You got it.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Personal training. We got you.
Yes.
Hold on. Let me check Instagram. I got to wipe my face off with this towel.
Well, so like I could get on a soapbox when it comes to elevating standards for coaches.
Oh, I love soapboxes.
So I don't think we use standards enough when it applies to movements. And so even from an injury prevention standpoint, we know, sports science tells us, that ranges of motion that you do not occupy on a regular basis and you do not move your body weight through at the very least, let alone another load or an external load, are weak ranges of motion.
You don't use it, you lose it, right?
It's not just that. It's when things go wrong, they don't go wrong where you're strongest. They go wrong where you don't train. And so for the athlete who tears their ACL or their MCL, it's typically because they're darting sideways very abruptly or very quickly changing direction, and they don't train that under speed and load, and so their ACL, their MCL snaps. For that person who busts an Achilles tendon, it's because they put that Achilles tendon under speed or under load in
Reckless softball.
Do so. Exactly. Yeah. And
They
so
haven't run in 3 years. Oops.
this isn't hard to figure out, right? Like progressive overload isn't a new concept. You need to gradually expose every part necessary of your body to speed and load relative to what you're trying to do. And so if I'm a trainer, job role number one as a trainer is prevention of injury, period, full stop. Everything after that is second, like increased performance, secondary to prevention of injury. And so if I know for a fact that allowing your knee to valgus inward as you come out of a squat increases your chance of an ACL or an MCL tear, why would I do that? Why would I put you under greater load and allow you to exhibit poor movement when I know it's going to increase your risk of injury? Oh, it's because I don't want to have the difficult conversation and tell you to pull load off the bar and move with mastery and try to convince you to do that. And instead, no, I'm just going to play to your ego and let you put more weight on the bar.
You got this. 10 more.
Right?
Hmm.
No.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Like, you know, having standards for movements and being like, no, we're like, you haven't hit the standard, so we're going to regress.
Absolutely.
You didn't hit the standard on this. We're going to pull the weights off. No problems.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then it's not about you. It's about standards. It's about core values. You know, hey, we expect virtuosity in movements. You didn't adhere to that, so we're going to pull it up. It's not a me versus you thing. It's you didn't hit the standard.
And it's not just about, it is about those things, but in addition, it's about, listen, it's athlete safety. I'm a professional trainer. I am not going to do something that threatens your body. You want to go, when we're not together, you want to go do something stupid, you do that on your own time. I get paid too much money to put your body in danger.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah. Talk a little bit about like the play aspect of this, because I think that some people don't like going to the gym. It feels like work. They've never felt comfortable there. They don't resonate with the idea of like clanging around with a bunch of weights.
Yeah.
But I think that, like, to your point earlier about someone getting in and getting their first pull up, they feel like this sense of accomplishment. They feel a lot more about like, oh, I am confident in being able to achieve other things. But can you talk about how play you can kind of insert that in gymnastics training in a way that's difficult to do with standard issue gym workouts?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of ways this works, right? So the first thing that needs to be acknowledged is humans are hardwired for play. There's a play circuit in your brain. It's been proven empirically. And so if you don't engage that circuit, you're missing an opportunity to engage as much of your brain as possible, right? So that's first and foremost. Second, he or she who goes to the gym more often than not will do best in the long run. Can we both agree on that?
I'm with you.
Consistency is king or queen. So if I want to encourage you to do that, it would behoove me to make it enjoyable. I want the thing that you do to be a thing that you look forward to. And you could talk about, like, you know, Andrew Huberman style hacking dopamine and motivation and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you got to like the thing that you're doing. And the easiest way to like the thing that you're doing is for it to feel playful, at least part of the time, you know? So finding a way to make things enjoyable and not so serious, I think, is really, really important for trainers and for athletes, for clients. Gymnastics does that really well. One of the things that we say is that frequent exposure is best when it comes to gymnastics. And that doesn't mean that you've got to be doing strict muscle ups or, you know, balancing on a beam. You can roll around on a floor and crawl like a bear, or do a crab walk, or crouch down and hop about like a duck. You know, anything where you're crawling, falling, rolling, all of those things where you just kind of goof around. Those general movements impart a benefit to your body and specifically to your brain that working with any external load can't. And so warm-ups especially are one of my favorite places to just goof around and have fun and move my body through space and see what it feels like. And in doing so, I get a bunch of the benefits of gymnastics, and they just come about by I'm screwing about. I'm having some fun. I'm playing.
I love that, because everyone hates warm-ups.
Yes.
So if we can install some playful aspects to that, I think we could get some better adherence and people actually doing them.
Yeah.
How do you recommend people do that, especially if they're not comfortable with their bodies or they're not confident just jumping on a bar and moving around and doing doing stuff like that, how do you get involved in the play side, if you're coming in this fresh?
Yeah. I think a lot of times people have a presumption about what a warm up is. And there's a simple process, and I'm sure people have heard of it before, that, yeah, exactly. And like, maybe that's it. For sometimes it's super simple. Like, I've worked in a CrossFit affiliate before where the warm up is, hey, I want you to run out the door for 400 meters. You're going to come back and we're going to do a bunch of other stuff. Or, hey, everybody start with 20 jumping jacks. And it's a very, very generic thing. I've also started warm ups where I tell people, hey, I want you to pick your right foot up and balance on your left foot until I tell you to stop. And you'd be surprised how quickly that falls apart for a lot of people. And it's not a difficult concept, but pretty quickly it's like, okay, if I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to balance, as we're both doing, it seems like.
Yeah, it's true.
Right. And like, you sit here and you balance, and pretty quickly that ankle starts rocking back and forth, and you start playing the shimmy game, and especially if you've got a bunch of people and you make it a game where it's like, okay, don't lose eye contact. First person to blink loses. It's easy to get those things going. So fitness is always more fun with friends. If you can get a friend and do it with them, that's the easiest way to do it. Keep it simple. Balance, single foot balance is an easy way to work something like that into a warm up. Bear crawls. So like either like a quadruped or what we call a gymnastics bear, where it's a high hipped bear crawl around in a circle. And the next prerequisite is, don't take yourself so seriously. Fitness and movement and all of these things are not so serious that that it has to look Instagram worthy. And in fact, there is, and this dovetails with play, there is so much more benefit to failing at things, especially for adults, that the less I worry about that, the less I worry about what someone else is thinking about what my warm-up is, the more benefits I get from it.
I like it. And everything you're saying, I keep in my mind going back to, I just started doing jujitsu last year. I have to bring it up on every podcast so people just know that I do jujitsu. It's really important.
Yeah.
But everything comes back to like that playful kind of like, it's almost like horsing around with some of your buddies,
Yes.
You're just like, it's this really interesting, like consensual fighting play style.
Yes.
That I think has been very good for my brain in terms of just keeping me motivated, wanting to show back up. And I have not experienced that with fitness in a while.
Yeah.
I've been training for 20 years. It's like I kind of been a little bit burnt out on just going to the gym and going through the motions, hit my workouts, but they're not really inspired.
Sure.
So, but adding in that additional like playful element and like going and actually like laughing sometimes as you're like rolling with some guy, and it's just a different vibe. So yeah, finding that thing where you can go and actually leave and be like, that was not only edifying for my body, but also for my soul is really cool. I think you need something like that in order to stay on your fitness long-term. I
agree entirely. And having dabbled with jujitsu, I mean, there's definitely times where you're rolling with a guy and you end up, with his face in your butt or your face stuck in his armpit, and like you can laugh or you can have a really bad time, and
I do both.
Do both. Why not? Don't be a sucker, tap out. And just things like that. There's so much crap going on in the world. Why wouldn't I want to laugh at something like that? Why wouldn't I want to encourage myself to experience communities and situations that bring up, like, that light me up the way you're describing, I don't think there's enough of that, and maybe partly because we don't allow ourselves to experience enough of that. If we're very, very focused on career, or we're very, very focused, or we're caught up thinking about a certain thing, getting just a little bit of freedom where we can horseplay is it's freeing. It's a lot of fun.
And when you're talking about this, I keep thinking about like ways that like I could do this with my kids. I got a 6 and a 3-year-old basically. And how could I bring a little bit more joy to just the pursuit of movement? They're always, we had a home gym, got a gym in the garage. So they're always in there with me doing stuff. But I think they would have a lot more fun if I was like, we're doing duck walks now. You
Yeah,
know, we're jumping like bunnies. You know, I think
absolutely.
they'd be like, that's my shit right there.
Yeah,
So
I think
yeah,
that.
kids got
So,
it right though.
well, they have it
Needless to
right
say,
because they don't worry. They don't worry what other people think.
yeah.
There's a neurologist, a pediatric neurologist named Dr. Tommy Wood, who says that he talks about the life cycle of an adult in terms of the stress that they put their brain under. And he says that the brain is a muscle, really, in terms of how it adapts to things. So it needs stress. So neurological stress, when you're an infant, there is a constant neurological stress. You're trying to figure out how to sit up. You're trying to figure out how to crawl and then how to walk. And that's why when you get these major shifts in behavior with babies, they do something astounding and then they crash hard because their body's got to recover neurologically from all of that. That continues into adolescence and into your teenage years. And then it peters out about the time you leave high school or college. Because then you go into typically an occupation where you specialize and you do a thing and you get very good at doing that thing, but you don't expose yourself to anything new, right? And what that means is all through your infancy and your adolescence and your teenage years, you are trying and failing, trying and failing, trying and failing, whether physically, emotionally, in your peer groups or anything like that. It's this constant process of butting up against failure or struggle or stress. Well, we really like to avoid stress and we really don't like people to see us struggle. So we try to set up our lives so that we don't experience that. And in doing so, you stop growing cognitively. And the byproduct of that, what we see in people who retire, is they have rapid cognitive decline. Exactly. One of the ways to step outside of that is to do things that are neurologically stressful, but that are also fun so that you keep doing them. Things like dance lessons, jujitsu, gymnastics, learning to play an instrument. And in fact, they did a great study where they took MRIs of musicians, like pianists and violinists and things like that. There was a certain level of um, cognitive capability, cognitive growth rate that a master pianist or violinist exhibited. The people who exhibited greater cognitive growth rate were amateur pianists or violinists because they were constantly butting up against stress and failure at a greater rate than the experts. And so if retaining neuroplasticity or staving off cognitive decline is important to you, and I think it should be important to everybody, you got to get over what other people think and you got to put yourself in uncomfortable situations and fail continuously as often as possible for the rest of your life. And I think gymnastics and play and just doing stuff like that is a great way to do that.
And if you can fail, but while still having a good time, I think that's that magic combination that allows for continual growth and consistency, like you mentioned earlier.
Right.
If you're failing and you're having a bad time with it, it's hard to stay motivated to keep going. But if you're like, hey, I'm just going to show up with my buddies, we're going to do some handstand push-ups. I'm gonna eat the ground one time. It's going to be fine. We're going to have a good time with it.
Yeah.
We'll have a barbecue afterwards.
So I with the gymnastics course, we were in Columbus, Ohio this past weekend, and we're running a seminar. We run 2-day seminars. We have a level 1 course and a level 2 course, and we are always day 2 in the afternoon getting into inversions, how to kick up into a handstand, how to hold a handstand with spotters so everybody's safe and stuff like that. Invariably, you get these situations where it's like, okay, go play. And we just let people screw around and try stuff. And somebody will take a tumble on a mat and they end up with their butt in the air and everybody laughs. And that kind of stuff, if you can see your way clear to trying things, failing, laughing, and not caring what other people think, you've unlocked it, man. You found the key to a life where you can do anything and keep growing, and you'll get better at things faster than other people because you're not afraid of that failure, and you'll go further faster rather.
That's a really important lesson. I hope people are picking up on that, because I think everyone can motivate themselves and grind through stuff and white knuckle it for a 6-week challenge or a 3-month, cut or something like that.
Yeah.
But how do you make this a part of your life? How do you incorporate this not just today, not just this year, but literally forever. And I think
Right.
that you just hit on that point.
Yeah, for sure.
Going back to the neuroplasticity real quick. Have you ever read the book, The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman
No,
Doidge?
I haven't.
He talks about how like learning a new skill,
Mhm.
basically like doing a bunch of reps throughout the course of the day.
Mhm.
So, or like, getting more and more and more frequency
Mhm.
of like the stimulus rather than going and just doing like, I'm doing an hour at the gym. So like when I'm coaching people on like how to get their first pull up, I'll have them
Right.
take one of those iron gyms or like the bars in their house. And every time they pass under it, they just do a hang or a negative or a single pull up. And then after, 3-4 weeks of that, all of a sudden
Right.
they're banging out 5-6.
Right. So greasing the groove.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was talking about how people with cerebral palsy, what he would do is he would take their good hand
Mhm.
and like take an oven mitt and basically slap it on their body. And so they couldn't have access to that hand. So everything they had to do was with their affected hand.
Right.
And so they're taking coins off, putting them into jars or whatever else, just little like coordination tasks.
Yeah.
And over the course of weeks and months, they would build that bigger neural pathway, or go around the existing neural pathway that's no longer functioning,
Right.
and build up like an ability that they didn't have before. And so I think about that a lot when it comes to learning a new skill, especially like an exercise skill where people think it's just going to the gym, but it's literally like 500 different movements that are all like, all to have their own requisites and practice that need to be put in. So
Yeah. That's a really, really interesting concept. I like that because so for me, that kind of dovetails into what I was saying earlier, where we don't like experiencing failure. And we especially don't like it when other people see us experience failure. Because I think it goes back to that, like, if I fail, I will be ostracized from the tribe and the safety of the fire, and I will have to go sit in the dark with the monsters by myself, And so we don't want to do that. Whereas if you don't have a choice, you got to hold the oven mitt with your good hand. You got to do everything with your bad hand. Of course, you're going to get better faster, which is amazing. And we know that, but everybody and their sister will do everything they can to avoid doing the thing they know they need to do just because it's a little bit harder, and that they found a way to do that is awesome. I think that's fantastic. It's also
yeah,
interesting that you talked about like neural pathways, and it makes me think of motor unit recruitment. So, a motor unit being a muscle fiber bundle and a nerve. Gymnastics specifically is one of the safest ways to increase motor unit recruitment growth. So if I have a fixed number of motor units that I normally recruit when I do something like that, there's a bunch of things that we can do with gymnastics that can teach us how to grow or recruit additional motor units. You can do the same thing with external loads. So like overloading a deadlift. Say you take 100% of your deadlift, you try to pull it off the ground, can't do it. Well, if you put that same barbell on racks and you put 101% greater than what you can lift concentrically, and you do eccentrics with it instead, eccentrics facilitate greater motor unit growth. And you could do the same thing with a pull up without having to pull 400 pounds or whatever off the ground. So it's much safer. Pull ups, push ups, sit ups, squats, all those things can be done at body weight, and you can get your body in very, 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 very strong, very, very quickly, in a very safe manner, just by doing the right kind of gymnastics or doing a gymnastics movement the right way.
I think that goes back to like the kind of what we were talking about earlier with the closed chain exercises can being more beneficial.
Yeah.
Because like, you're doing like an overloaded eccentric, like on a bench press or a deadlift.
Yep.
Again, your body's like, are we about to die? Are we should we change some stuff so we don't die? Like,
Right.
but that's just an easier way to do it with that closed chain. So I
Yeah.
love that. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I did want to get into something else that I know you're very passionate about and very knowledgeable about, which I think is like super, super important for increasing longevity, improving energy, just generally getting better results. And that's sleep. We talk about sleep a lot, but I don't think people really understand how important it is to not only get high quality sleep, but also develop a great sleep hygiene and like sleep routine.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about that and how we can optimize ourselves to perform at a high level using sleep?
I think thankfully so thank you, Joe Rogan, for introducing everybody to the world. I think more people are being introduced to the concept of high quality sleep than even 3 years ago. Um, and if you're looking for a great resource, Dr. Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep is a fantastic, easy, readable book talking about the many, many, many tremendous benefits of sleep. So sleep is so important. It's hard to get people to understand. If you listen to a guy like Dr. Mike Israetel, he will say, if you tell me you get less than 8 hours of sleep, I don't want to know what your training program is because it doesn't matter. You're wasting your time. Right?
I don't know a lot of people who are getting 8 hours of sleep.
Well, and
If
then
I look at my client list, there's like two of them.
right. So then you come into lifestyle factors and obviously individual considerations. If you're a guy with kids, there's a chunk of years where that might be a dream for you. And a lot of that is outside of our control. Some of it isn't, you know. And again, we all have choices that we make. And what we know from a scientific standpoint is, for example, for guys, right? If you sleep on average 6 hours a night, I can tell you that you are waking up with a testosterone level that is, on average, the same as a person who's 10 years older than you. Yeah. And so if you were looking for a radical way to improve your quality of life, finding a way to get at least one, hopefully 2 more hours of sleep in the night will be the easiest way to do that. Before supplements, before another day of training, or even another full day of rest, increasing the quantity of your sleep will move the needle significantly. Part of the reason is if you don't get enough sleep, you don't go to sleep at the right time, you don't get the right kind of sleep. So we know that deep sleep, for example, is tremendously beneficial. If you're engaging in regular resistance training, you need that restorative, restful sleep that allows you to recover from that resistance training and put you in an optimal place to take advantage of your next training session. If you're not getting enough sleep, you don't get that, which means you are continually putting your body at a deficit in terms of its capability. That deep sleep happens primarily in the first several hours of the night. So if you're not going to bed until 11:30 or 12 and you're getting up at 6 or 7, you're cutting off a window of time that is very typically reserved for deep sleep.
Why is that? I've heard that a lot of times people say that like every hour of sleep before midnight is worth two afterwards. But
Yeah.
like how does our body know when midnight hits? And
Circadian rhythms. It's not about before midnight. It's about when we humans typically go to sleep in our normal circadian cycle and when we wake back up. And that really has to do with, when does the sun set and when does the sun rise, right? There's a lot of what we do is rooted on that. So it's those first couple hours of sleep when nighttime is hitting, if you can maximize that window of time so that you get light sleep and REM sleep later on, because it's still also very important. It just has different physiological functions. You get the best version of sleep. So like REM sleep, it's said that REM sleep is really, really good for memory and cognition. But during REM sleep, for example, you don't get huge dumps of HGH and testosterone from your brain. That's basically reserved for deep sleep. And there are some scientists who are like, hey, if you want to take legal steroids, just sleep 2 more hours. And it's effectively the same thing.
that's a wild statement right there. We have to
Right.
put that into an Instagram reel
Yeah. Yeah.
for the people.
Yeah.
So sounds great. Love that idea.
Yeah.
What are the best practices? How do we actually make a measurable improvement in our sleep, especially if we're someone who doesn't have like the length of time?
Yeah.
We don't maybe have 9 hours to be in bed to get a full 8.
That's a great thing to say. Time in bed is different from time asleep. So kind of knowing the amount of time that you have to be in bed. Let's say you only have 8 hours to be in bed. You get home at 9 p.m. You have dinner. You see your spouse. You try to be a a good healthy individual, you're like, I'm going to get into bed at 10. You're probably not going to fall asleep right at 10. It's probably going to be a little less than that. You've got to get up at 6 a.m. Let's assume that that's what's going on here. There are a handful of things that you can do in order to, as much as possible, set yourself up for success. The first is reduction in blue light. So these things, are great at giving blue light. So
Cell phones, in case you're
yes,
not watching.
exactly. So yeah, if I hold up a cell phone there, so turning on night mode for your cell phone. I've seen people where they will set up an iPhone where if they triple click the home button, it goes to all red on the screen. So it's basically a red only screen. It removes all blue from the display. But a better option is no screens. So no screens the hour before bed. Leave your phone in another room. In a perfect world, you don't have a TV in your bedroom, so you don't even have that as an option. And part of that process is you stop the dopamine stimulation that happens in your brain. You begin the downregulation process a little bit sooner and a little bit easier.
What the way he's saying here is turn the TV off in your room and stop looking at TikTok.
Yeah,
guys,
for real.
You can't sleep well if you've been scrolling TikTok. It's designed to like spike you. It's designed to get you to hooked in. You get the blue light from that. And then you don't need to watch Office reruns to fall asleep. That's a trauma response. You need help.
Oh my God. Talk to somebody. Yes. I read an article this morning talking about how the sleep habits of teenagers across America are ruined because they have constant access to a lit device, basically. I know.
It's tough.
Well, so once you can put the screen away, one of the next things that you can do is turn the temperature in the room down. There are some studies that suggest that the optimum temperature is somewhere in like the mid 60s, right? So quite cool, probably, enough that you have a blanket. And this is going to sound weird, but people who participated in the study did best when they had that temperature, but then socks and gloves on.
Gloves. Socks. I love a sock sleep, but I've never done gloves.
Yeah. So it's something about making sure the extremities stay warm enough while also being able to kind of cool globally, where your body heats from core to extremity. So your extremities are always a little bit cooler than the center of your body. Well, if you take care of that, then your body can downregulate, relax a little bit more without having the kind of, oh, I'm too cold stress response from, cold extremities.
I've always said if you want to like cure a cold, wear socks to bed.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I have no science to back it up. I believe it in my heart. But the vibes feel right. You know what I'm saying, Sam?
Yeah, I do. That makes a lot of sense.
Cool. So these are good. These are good tips. You got anything else in terms of like sleep hygiene? There's a couple things that I do that I really like, but I want to see what else you got.
My favorite is an eye mask.
Oh, I'm glad you said it. I love an eye mask.
Once
such a prima donna, but it's so delightful.
Oh, you feel like a prima donna, and then you do it for a while, and you can play around with a couple different ones. I have a manta sleep mask, and I really like it, and I recommend one that is effectively like a blackout curtain for your face, right? So as little light as possible, but that doesn't mean that you can have light in the room and not be affected. They did studies that showed people who were asleep in a totally dark room, right? Scientists shined a laser pen on a part of their body that they could not see while they were asleep, and their body responded to the light.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the eye mask is a great step in the right direction. It really, really ensures that, like, from a vision standpoint, you can't get any light in your eyes, but also just really dark rooms. That's one of the best ways to help yourself along.
So I wear an eye mask, and I also use a light alarm clock, which doesn't make any sense, but it works 100% of the time.
Yeah.
When that light kicks on, I wake up. Yeah. Like I can't not do it. And maybe it's like a little bit kind of bleeding in from the sides or whatever, but like it still works because like I share a wall with my toddler and I don't want to wake him up with like a loud alarm.
Absolutely.
So that's like, that makes a lot of sense, but that is a crazy fact.
Yeah. Yeah. And if, again, I recommend the book, Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. It changed entirely. There are a handful of times in my life where it's like you read something or you study something or you learn something. You're like, okay, well, I'm never doing that again, and thinking about sleep casually, it was that ended because of that book. I'll never take sleep for granted ever again.
I think that we need to develop like a identity as professional sleepers. People are always like, "I'm not a good sleeper." I'm like, "Honey, you're supposed to be. You were born a good sleeper. Something else happened."
Well, so let's come back to something you said earlier, right? You have a handful of clients who only sleep 6 hours. I would I would want to dig in with people. Anyone who I work with, they say, "Oh, well, I don't have time to do that." Do you really? Do you really not have time, or do you choose not to make the time? And that's where understanding the consequences of something, especially the long-term consequences of ignoring something like sleep hygiene, can be helpful, because it might get you to put that phone down just a little bit earlier, to ignore the TV and spend some time with your loved one, or read a book instead of mindlessly watching a rerun or something like that. And the long-term benefits of those small changes, even though you might feel FOMO because social media and advertising and all of those things have conditioned you to feel that way, that goes away. And you do recoup more benefits from saying no to those things than saying yes to them.
And then you wake up with more energy and you're able to be more present and focused during the day, which is arguably better than being half focused on whatever dumbass TV show you were watching at night anyways.
And you won't need a medical grade dose of caffeine to operate.
Boom. My routine is and I think I like this too. I like the idea of a routine before bed, because I think that everyone's always talking about an AM routine, but I think the AM routine starts at night. You have to have a PM routine. Ooh. In order to really
put that on a shirt.
Yeah, I think did we just start a new company? We'll call it Virtuosity.
There you go. Virtuous sleep.
Yeah. So I always shut everything down. I try to put my phone away by an hour before. I could do better at that.
Yeah.
And then I take my supplements. So I'm taking the magnesium and all the other things kind of at night.
Yep.
Go to the bathroom, brush teeth, do that sort of thing.
Yep.
Then I go to lay in bed. I have a Kindle that I throw in night mode, and Kindle's nice because it doesn't have the blue light. It's got it has side illumination. So in case you're like, Kindle screens, I don't think it is.
No.
And then I actually put the sleep mask on my forehead. It's like a trigger for me. So when I lay down, sleep mask on forehead, read my Kindle, and then as soon as I start feeling that sleep pressure of my eyes shutting, even if I'm in an exciting part of the book, it takes a little bit of discipline. Sometimes I'm not as good as I should be, but I put that down, pull the sleep mask down, and then done for the night.
Yeah.
And I feel like now that I'm in that routine and I've been doing this for several years, it's like I fall asleep after that so fast.
Sure.
And then if I do that really well, I can actually see that I track all my sleep data on my Aura ring. Mm-hmm. I see those deep sleep markers in the first 2-3 hours of the night. Yeah. And they're always better than if I am off routine.
Absolutely. That's also, by the way, so having that same routine, it's part of feeling safe for your brain, right? So you do the same thing over and over again. You're in the same spot. It's the same sequence of actions. It all helps your brain feel very safe, so that when you go to sleep, you don't fear what's going to happen in the night with the monsters away from the fire, right? That's part of the reason science suggests why we sleep horribly when we go to hotels, because it's a different routine. It's a different place. Your Paleolithic body does not feel as safe as when you're home in your hut with your tribe and you have the protection of the other people who you live with.
And also, they just put the sheets on too tight.
There's that. Yeah. I'm a no tucked in end of the sheet guy. Like, my feet got to be able to move. Off. Yeah.
Yeah. Funny how many things we talked about today came back to kind of the way we evolved in Paleolithic kind of ancestry, how at our core, we are not these digital creatures who should be on devices all the time. We should be out living in mud huts, playing with our friends, and going to sleep under the moon after we have a big bonfire and eat a cow.
Well, and if nothing else, assuming that because you choose to live your life a certain way, however that is, however that manifests, assuming that means you get to ignore your biology, I think is a misstep. Humans are largely unchanged for many, many, many thousands of years. And evolution is a very long process. And I think that you ignore those details at your peril, basically. Dr. Jordan Peterson says that which has been around longest is the most true. And human beings, as biological creatures, are largely unchanged for a very, very, very long period of time.
Feels like I could go in a tank top. Yeah, I'm with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Sam, this has been fascinating. I could talk to you for another couple of hours, bro. This has been amazing. But could you just real quick hit on Motivateful, your company, and how people can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my company's called Motivateful. It's like Motivate and Grateful had a baby. The idea is I have a team of coaches. We remove barriers for people. So if you have trouble getting started in fitness, or you've started a journey and you haven't experienced success, or you've experienced temporary success and you're very frustrated by that, you want to have a real life-changing set of habits, that's what we specialize in. And so for clients, we work very, very intensely with those clients, and we put them on a path to basically help them have better lives. We also are growing our team of coaches. And the idea is I want those coaches to be able to continue to do what they do for as long as possible. And so we provide resources to coaches to help them be more successful, be more financially independent, ultimately so that they can provide more good in people's lives for as long as possible. Because we don't need fewer trainers in the world. We need more of them, and we need them to keep doing what they're doing.
Love it, bro. And then people can catch up with you at Motivateful on Instagram. And then also, what's your other handle?
So my own personal handle is Coach Sam Burns. Get Motivateful on Instagram, and www.getmotivateful.com is our website. You can find us there, and free resources, jokes, anecdotes, and for coaches at Motivateful Coaches on Instagram, which is kind of coach centric stuff.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you too.